You know, people say your home is supposed to be your sanctuary, a place where you can shut out the noise of the world, close the door, and just be yourself. For me, that place was Willow Creek, a quiet neighborhood with trimmed lawns, picket fences, and the occasional gossiping neighbor waving at you from across the street. And in that picture-perfect setting, my world revolved around one thing: my dog, Buddy. Buddy wasn't just a pet, he was family. A golden retriever with soft brown eyes and a goofy grin that could melt away the worst day. Every evening we'd take long walks down Maple Lane, and people would smile when they saw him bounding happily beside me. Kids would run up to pet him, neighbors tossed him treats. He was loved, or so I thought. But then, it happened. One morning, I pulled open my mailbox and found a thick, cream-colored envelope with the dreaded HOA logo stamped on it. My heart sunk before I even opened it. If you've ever lived under an HOA, you know that's never good news. I tore it open and scanned the words. Effective immediately, all residents are prohibited from keeping pets that exceed 30 pounds. Your dog, Buddy, falls outside this requirement. You are hereby given notice to remove him from the property within 14 days or face fines and legal action. My hands trembled. I read the letter 3 times, each word hitting harder than the last. Remove him? Remove Buddy? The idea felt like a punch in the gut. The morning after I decided to fight, I woke up with a pit in my stomach. You know that heavy feeling when you're about to walk into a storm? That was me, sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at Buddy, wagging his tail like the world was sunshine and belly rubs. I envied him. He didn't know there was a battle coming. He just trusted me, like he always did. And that trust, it lit a fire inside me. The first crack in the neighborhood appeared when I went for my usual walk with Buddy down Maple Lane. Normally, everyone smiled. Kids ran over to hug him. But this time, it was different. Mrs. Patel, who lived 2 houses down, pulled her toddler away when Buddy trotted near. "Sorry," she said quickly, not meeting my eyes. We heard what the HOA said." "What exactly did you hear?" I asked, stopping in my tracks. "That he's dangerous," she whispered, her voice low like she didn't even believe it herself. That bigger dogs can't be trusted. They said there was an incident last month with a German Shepherd chasing a child." I felt my jaw clench. "That wasn't Buddy. He wouldn't hurt a fly." "I know," she said softly, "that people are scared. You should be careful." Then she hurried off, dragging her kid by the hand. I stood there, stunned. Scared? Of Buddy? This was the same dog that let neighborhood kids dress him up in Halloween costumes every year. But rumors spread faster than wildfire in Willow Creek. By the end of the week, I knew the HOA wasn't just banning Buddy. They were poisoning the well. I found out through the grapevine that Mrs. Caldwell had gone door to door explaining the new rule. She claimed Buddy was a liability, that my refusal to comply was putting everyone at risk. Suddenly, people I'd known for years were giving me side glances, whispering as I passed. But not everyone turned. That Friday, as I pulled weeds from my garden, my neighbor across the street, Mr. Rodriguez, came over. He was in his 70s, a retired firefighter with more scars than I could count and the kind of straight-shooting honesty I appreciated. "They're full of it," he said, jerking his thumb toward the HOA office. "That dog of yours, best behaved one I've seen around here. You need any witnesses, you put me down first." My chest tightened with gratitude. "Thanks, Frank. I don't know if I'm crazy for fighting this." "You'd be crazy not to," he said firmly. "They think they can just make up rules, bully people into obedience. That's not how America works." And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just fighting for Buddy anymore. I was fighting for something bigger. Still, the HOA wasn't letting up. On Monday morning, another letter arrived, this one harsher, Failure to remove your dog by the stated deadline will result in daily fines of $200, liens placed on your property, and potential legal action from the board. $200 per day. I felt my blood pressure spike. That wasn't just about Buddy anymore. That was a threat to take my home. I stormed into the HOA office again, letter in hand. Mrs. Caldwell was there, of course, her smug little smile waiting for me. "You're bleeding me dry," I snapped, slamming the notice on her desk. "This is extortion." "It's enforcement," she corrected coolly. "We're simply upholding community standards. If you'd like to avoid further costs, you know what to do." "I'm not giving up my dog." She leaned back, folding her arms. "Then maybe Willow Creek isn't the right community for you." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about rules. This was about power. Mrs. Caldwell and her little board of loyalists wanted me gone. Buddy was just their excuse. I walked out of there shaking with rage, but also with clarity. They weren't going to stop. So neither could I. That night, I called an attorney. A friend of a friend recommended a woman named Laura Hastings, known around town for going toe-to-toe with HOAs. When she picked up, I unloaded everything. Buddy, the new rule, the fines, the threats. When I was done, there was a pause. Then she said, "They don't have the right to do this. An HOA can't just invent a rule and apply it retroactively, especially not when it violates basic property rights. If you're willing to fight, I'll stand with you." Relief washed over me like a wave. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a lifeline. We met the next morning at a coffee shop, and Laura laid out the plan. She said, "First, we'll file for an injunction to stop them from fining you until a judge hears the case. Second, we'll challenge the legitimacy of their rule change. And third," she leaned forward, "we'll expose exactly how this board has been abusing its power." I nodded, heart pounding. Let's do it. But word travels fast in small neighborhoods. And by the end of the week, I knew Mrs. Caldwell had caught wind of my legal move. Because one night, as I was taking Buddy out for his last walk, I saw something on my lawn. At first, I thought it was trash. But when I got closer, my stomach dropped. It was a flyer. Printed in bold letters across the top, "Dangerous Dog in Willow Creek." And right below it, a blurry picture of Buddy taken through my fence. I picked it up with shaking hands, rage burning in my chest. Someone, no, I know exactly who, was trying to turn the whole neighborhood against us. I looked down at Buddy, who just wagged his tail like nothing was wrong, and I whispered, "They don't know who they're messing with." Because if Mrs. Caldwell wanted war, she just got one. But what I didn't realize was how quickly this war was about to escalate and how far the HOA was willing to go to break me. The morning after I found that flyer, I knew things were different. It wasn't just about a rule anymore, it was personal. Somebody, probably Mrs. Caldwell herself, was trying to paint Buddy as a threat. And when I stepped outside, I saw it wasn't just my lawn. Flyers were pinned to streetlights, taped to mailboxes, even stuffed under neighbors' doors. Everywhere I looked, Buddy's face, my sweet, gentle Buddy, was being branded as dangerous. I felt sick. By the time I got to work that day, my phone was buzzing with texts from neighbors who were still on my side. Mr. Rodriguez, "Saw the garbage they're spreading. Don't let it shake you." My friend Alicia down the block, "Caldwell dropped flyers on my porch last night. She's out of control." But not everyone felt that way. When I got home, I saw Mrs. Patel again, this time crossing the street to avoid me. She clutched her little boy's hand tighter when Buddy wagged his tail at them. She didn't say a word, but the fear in her eyes said enough. That cut deep. I shut my front door, dropped into a chair, and buried my face in my hands. That's when Laura, my lawyer, called. "I've seen this tactic before," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It's intimidation. They're trying to scare you into backing down before court." "Well, it's working," I admitted, glancing down at Buddy, lying across my feet. "I don't know how much more of this I can take. My own neighbors are looking at me like I'm a criminal." There was a pause. Then Laura said, "That's exactly why we can't stop. If you let them do this to you, they'll do it to the next person, and the next." She was right. As much as I wanted to crawl into a hole and hide, that wasn't me, and it definitely wasn't fair to Buddy. So the next morning, Laura and I went to the courthouse and filed for an injunction. It was the first step in officially taking this fight to a judge. I'll never forget the feeling of sliding that stack of papers across the clerk's desk. It felt like planting a flag. But the HOA didn't take long to hit back. That very evening, I heard a knock on my door. When I opened it, there was a uniformed man standing on my porch, a code enforcement officer. "Sir, we've received a complaint about excessive barking and sanitation issues on your property." I blinked at him, stunned. "What? Buddy doesn't bark excessively. And sanitation issues? What does that even mean?" He sighed, clearly tired of being dragged into neighborhood drama. "We have to follow up on every complaint. Mind if I take a look?" So there I was, walking a stranger around my yard while Buddy followed us with his tail wagging, like he thought this was some new game. The officer glanced around, checked the fence line, peered into corners. Of course he found nothing. Finally, he shook his head. "Looks fine to me. Sorry about the hassle. Just doing my job." As he left, I stood there, my fists clenched. It was obvious what had happened. The HOA had filed a bogus complaint to try to get the city on my back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, every sound outside making me paranoid. What if they escalated again? What if they tried to hurt Buddy just to make their case? That thought sent chills through me. The next morning, as if on cue, I found another notice taped to my door. "Failure to comply with HOA bylaws will result in a lien on your property. This is your final warning." My stomach dropped. A lien meant they were threatening to take my house. I snapped a picture and sent it to Laura. She called me within minutes. "They're bluffing. They can't enforce a lien without due process, and we're already ahead of them in court. This is just pressure." "Yeah, well, it's working," I muttered. "Then let's turn the pressure back on them," she said. "We'll file for discovery. If they want to play dirty, let's shine a light on how this board is really operating." I'll admit, I didn't fully understand what that meant at the time, but I would soon. Because a week later, we sat in a conference room, me and Laura on one side, Mrs. Caldwell and her lawyer on the other. She wore that same smug smile, like she was already picking out new curtains for my house. But Laura was ready. She slid a folder across the table. "We'd like to see the minutes from the meeting where you claim this rule was passed, along with the notice you were required to give all residents before any bylaw change." Mrs. Caldwell's smile faltered for the first time. Her lawyer cleared his throat. "We'll, have to gather those documents." Laura leaned forward. "Take your time. The judge will want to see them." I'll never forget the look on Caldwell's face. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear in her eyes. When we walked out of that room, Laura grinned at me. "They don't have what they need, I can tell. They rushed this through without following procedure. If that's true, your dog stays, the fines disappear, and this board has a serious problem on its hands." For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. Real, solid hope. But that hope didn't last long. because the very next day I came home to find something that made my blood run cold. I don't think I've ever known true panic until that moment. Standing in my backyard, staring at the open gate, my chest felt like it had collapsed. "Buddy!" I shouted, my voice cracking as it echoed down the empty street. Nothing. Just silence. I bolted out the gate, running barefoot down the sidewalk, calling his name over and over. My neighbors peeked out from behind curtains. A few stepped onto porches. Some looked concerned. Others, well, some looked almost smug, like they knew this was coming. Mr. Rodriguez came out in his slippers, waving a flashlight. "I'll help you look," he called. "Thank you," I gasped, barely stopping long enough to catch my breath. We scoured the neighborhood, my throat raw from yelling, my eyes scanning every shadow. Every rustle of leaves made my heart jump. What if he was hit by a car? What if someone took him on purpose? That thought chilled me to the bone, because deep down, I knew this wasn't an accident. Buddy didn't just unlock the gate himself. Someone had opened it. Someone wanted him gone. 2 hours passed. My legs burned. My voice was gone. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take another step, I heard it. A bark. Faint, but familiar. I sprinted toward the sound, Mr. Rodriguez close behind. We turned the corner, and there he was. Buddy, standing near the entrance of Willow Creek, tail wagging, panting like he'd been running. "Buddy!" I dropped to my knees as he bounded toward me, practically knocking me over. I buried my face in his fur, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Don't you ever scare me like that again." Relief flooded me, but anger followed fast. Someone had tried to take him from me, and that wasn't just harassment anymore. That was war. The next morning, I filed a police report. The officer took notes, nodding sympathetically, but I could tell he'd heard stories like this before. "Without cameras or witnesses, it'll be tough to prove someone opened the gate intentionally," he said. But I knew, and I had a pretty good idea who was behind it. When I told Laura, she frowned. "They're escalating. This isn't just intimidation anymore. It's endangerment. We'll bring this up in court." I nodded, but my gut twisted. If they were willing to put Buddy's life at risk, what else were they capable of? The tension in the neighborhood thickened after that. It felt like every time I stepped outside, half the street was watching me. Some with pity, some with hostility. Flyers still popped up now and then, even though I tore them down whenever I found them. But there was also solidarity. People who'd been quiet before started speaking up. Alicia, the mom down the street, marched right up to me one morning. "This is ridiculous," she said, arms crossed. "Buddy is the sweetest dog in this neighborhood. My kids love him. If the HOA tries to kick you out, we'll fight with you." Her words gave me strength. Maybe Mrs. Caldwell was powerful, but she wasn't invincible, and people were starting to see through her. Finally, the day of the injunction hearing arrived. I walked into that courthouse with Buddy's collar in my hand like a good luck charm, Laura by my side. Across the aisle, Mrs. Caldwell sat stiff and smug, her lawyer shuffling papers. When the judge entered, the room went silent. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. Laura stood first. "Your Honor, this case is not about noise or property damage or safety. It is about an HOA board exceeding its authority, inventing a rule without due process, and targeting a single resident. My client has lived peacefully with his dog for years without incident. This so-called ban was never properly enacted. It's unlawful, and it must be struck down." Caldwell's lawyer jumped up next. Your Honor, the HOA has a duty to protect residents. Large dogs pose a risk. The board received multiple complaints. This rule is within our rights. The judge held up a hand. I'll need to see the official minutes from the meeting where this rule was passed, and proof that proper notice was given to all homeowners. That's when it happened. Caldwell's lawyer hesitated. He flipped through his folder, shuffled papers, cleared his throat. We don't have those records with us today. Laura smiled like a shark. Because they don't exist, Your Honor. The judge's gaze hardened. You expect me to enforce a rule with no documentation? The lawyer stammered, but Caldwell just sat there, her lips pressed so tight they turned white. Finally, the judge said, until proper documentation is provided, this rule is unenforceable. The fines are suspended, the lien is void, and the dog stays. I almost collapsed from relief. Buddy was safe. For now. As we left the courtroom, Laura clapped me on the shoulder. That's round one. Don't let your guard down. They'll come back swinging. And she was right, because that night when I got home, I found something waiting on my porch. An envelope. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper typed in bold letters. You think you've won? This isn't over. Next time, you won't be so lucky. My hands shook as I read it. This wasn't just HOA politics anymore. This was personal. This was a threat. And I knew things were about to get darker than I ever imagined. I sat at my kitchen table that night, the anonymous note spread out in front of me. My hands were still shaking. I'd faced plenty of intimidation from the HOA already, bogus fines, harassment, even Buddy nearly being taken. But this was different. This wasn't official. This was personal. I read it again. You think you've won? This isn't over. Next time, you won't be so lucky. My stomach turned. Was it Caldwell? One of her cronies? Or some cowardly neighbor too scared to put their name on it? Whoever it was, the message was clear. They wanted me afraid. Well, it worked, at least for one night. I barely slept, every creak of the house making me jump. Buddy stayed curled up against me, his steady breathing the only thing keeping me from completely unraveling. By morning, fear had turned into something else. Anger. If they wanted to scare me, fine, but I wasn't going to just sit there and take it. So I called Laura. She wasn't surprised. This is textbook escalation, she said. When HOAs feel cornered, they get sloppy. Good news for us is sloppy means evidence. That's when she suggested something I hadn't thought of before. Discovery means we can request all HOA communications, emails, meeting notes, financial records. If they've been bending the rules, we'll find out. I nodded slowly, my pulse quickening. You think there's something shady going on? I know there is, Laura said flatly. They didn't target you because of Buddy. That was just the excuse. The question is, why? That stuck with me. Why me? Out of all the residents in Willow Creek, why was Caldwell so hell-bent on driving me out? It didn't take long to start piecing things together. Mr. Rodriguez invited me over a few nights later. We sat on his porch, him sipping a beer, me nursing a glass of water. He leaned in close and lowered his voice. You know that vacant lot next to your house? The one they've been talking about turning into a park? Yeah, I said cautiously. Well, rumor has it, Caldwell's got a developer lined up to buy it. But here's the kicker. The sale price depends on certain conditions. I frowned. What kind of conditions? Like making sure the neighborhood's appeal isn't brought down by things they don't want. Bigger dogs, people who won't fall in line. You see where I'm going with this? I felt my blood run cold. This wasn't about Buddy at all. This was about money. Caldwell was trying to clear out anyone who might lower property values or stand in the way of her deal. The next day, Laura confirmed it. We pulled their financial records. Guess what? Caldwell's been making payments to a consulting firm tied to that developer, off the books. It all clicked into place. Buddy wasn't a threat, I was, because I wasn't the kind of resident Caldwell could control. And if she could force me out with some phony dog ban, she could do it to anyone. That realization lit a fire in me. This wasn't just about saving Buddy anymore. This was about exposing the truth. So Laura and I dug deeper. We combed through documents, pulled emails, and the more we found, the worse it got. The HOA board had been bending the rules for years, funneling money into pet projects, waiving fines for friends, slapping liens on anyone who questioned them. And suddenly, my fight wasn't just mine. Because when I started talking to neighbors, really talking, not just casual how's the weather chatter, they started opening up. Alicia told me about the time the HOA fined her for leaving a bike on her porch overnight. Frank, the retired firefighter, revealed they'd once threatened him over the color of his shed. Even Mrs. Patel, who had avoided me for weeks, finally admitted they'd tried to bully her into paying for landscaping she didn't need. She said, "They make everyone feel powerless. We didn't know how to fight back." That's when it hit me. I wasn't just fighting for Buddy anymore. I was fighting for all of us. But Caldwell wasn't done either. One evening I came home to find a letter taped to my door again, only this time it wasn't official HOA stationery. It was handwritten, messy, rushed. "Drop the lawsuit, or we'll make sure Buddy disappears for good." My heart stopped. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was a threat against Buddy's life. I called the police immediately, but just like before, they said without proof, there wasn't much they could do. Still, they took the letter and opened a case. That night I sat on the floor with Buddy, his head resting on my lap. My hands shook as I stroked his fur. "I don't care what it takes. I'm not letting them win. Not over you, not over this neighborhood." Because by then, I realized something. Caldwell thought she could intimidate me into silence, but all she'd done was give me more reason to fight louder, harder, and smarter. And she was about to learn that when you back someone into a corner, especially someone with nothing left to lose, you'd better be ready for the fallout. Because the next hearing wasn't just going to be about Buddy anymore. It was going to be about Caldwell and everything she'd been hiding. The courtroom was packed that morning. Neighbors filled the benches, some curious, some nervous, and a few, like Frank and Alicia, there to stand by me. Word had spread that today wasn't just about a dog. Today was about the truth. Buddy wasn't allowed inside, of course, but I wore his tag on a chain around my neck, a reminder of why I was there. Mrs. Caldwell sat across the aisle, stiff as a statue, her pearl necklace gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She had her lawyer at her side, but I noticed something different. She wasn't smiling this time. The judge entered, and we all rose. My heart thumped so hard I thought it might echo through the room. Laura stood first, calm, confident, like she'd been preparing her whole life for this moment. "Your Honor," she began, "this case started with a supposed dog ban, but what we've uncovered is far bigger. This board has been abusing its power for years, enforcing rules selectively, intimidating residents, and funneling money into projects that directly benefit Mrs. Caldwell." She lifted a stack of documents. "We have emails between Caldwell and a developer. We have financial records showing HOA funds being used for private consulting fees. And we have sworn statements from multiple residents who've been harassed and fined unfairly. The so-called dog ban wasn't about safety. It was about clearing out a homeowner who refused to fall in line. My client." Gasps rippled through the room. Caldwell shifted uncomfortably, her jaw tight. Her lawyer jumped up. Objection! This is irrelevant. We're here to discuss a pet violation, not launch a witch hunt. The judge peered over his glasses. If these documents are legitimate, they go to the heart of the board's authority. Overruled. That was the first crack in Caldwell's armor. One by one, neighbors stood and gave their testimonies. Alicia spoke about the bogus fines. Frank described the threats over his shed. Even Mrs. Patel, trembling but determined, told the court how she'd been pressured to pay for landscaping she didn't authorize. I sat there stunned. For weeks I'd felt alone, but here they were, my neighbors, my community, finally standing up. And then it was my turn. I took the stand, palms sweating, voice shaking at first. But when I looked at the judge, then at the rows of people watching, something inside me steadied. "I'm not a lawyer," I began. "I'm just a guy who wanted to live in peace with his dog. Buddy isn't dangerous. He's family. And when the HOA tried to take him away, I thought I was the only one fighting back. But what I realized is this isn't just about Buddy. It's about every homeowner here who's been bullied, threatened, and silenced. If they can do it to me, they can do it to anyone. That has to stop." By the time I stepped down, my hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear, from relief. I'd finally said what needed to be said. Then Caldwell was called to the stand. And that's when the real fireworks started. Laura didn't hold back. "Mrs. Caldwell, can you explain why HOA funds were used to pay Greenstone Consulting, a firm tied to the developer interested in buying land next to my client's home?" Mrs. Caldwell's face went pale. "That was, community outreach." "Outreach? Because these invoices here say zoning adjustments and property acquisition prep." The courtroom buzzed. Caldwell squirmed, avoiding eye contact. "And can you explain," Laura pressed, "why there are no official minutes from the meeting where this dog ban was supposedly passed, or why residents were never notified?" Caldwell stammered, her lawyer trying to object, but the judge silenced him. "Answer the question." Finally, Caldwell snapped. "Because people like him," she pointed at me, her voice sharp, "don't belong here. He undermines the order we've worked so hard to build. If he wants to keep that mutt, he should move somewhere else." The room fell silent. Her words hung in the air like smoke. Ugly, raw, honest. And in that silence, I knew she'd just sunk herself. The judge leaned back, expression unreadable. Then he spoke. "I've heard enough. This board overstepped its authority, failed to follow proper procedure, and acted with clear bias. The dog ban is null and void. All fines and liens against the plaintiff are dismissed. Furthermore, I am recommending this board be audited and that Mrs. Caldwell step down pending review." Gasps, then whispers, then applause broke out in the courtroom. I sat there in stunned silence, my chest tight, tears stinging my eyes. Buddy was safe, my home was safe, and Caldwell's empire of intimidation was crumbling. Outside the courthouse, neighbors crowded around me. Some hugged me, others shook my hand. Frank clapped me on the back. Alicia's kids asked if Buddy could come to their birthday party. Even Mrs. Patel smiled for the first time in weeks. And when I finally got home, Buddy was waiting at the door, tail wagging, eyes bright. I dropped to my knees, wrapping my arms around him, my heart so full it could have burst. "You're not going anywhere," I whispered into his fur. "We won." But as I sat there, holding him close, I realized something else too. This fight hadn't just been about saving my dog. It had been about saving our neighborhood, about showing people that you can stand up to bullies, even the ones hiding behind fancy titles and fake rules. And in the end, we didn't just protect Buddy. We took our community back.